was 17 when I realized that some people never truly leave your life, even when you think they have. I wish I had understood that earlier. Maybe I could have done something differently. Maybe I could have avoided what happened. When I was 14, I had a thing for older guys. Not just 1 or 2 years older. 3, 4, sometimes even 5 years older. That's how I met Alex. He was 17, tall, quiet, and had this mysterious charm that pulled me in. At first, he was sweet, always saying the right things, making me feel like I was the only person in the world who mattered. Then the cracks started showing. Alex had problems, serious ones. He had struggled with addiction, and his mental health was all over the place. I never judged him for that. What hurt was how he refused to get help. He wouldn't take his medication. He'd lash out over the smallest things. There were days when he was distant, then others when he was too intense. He made me feel like I was responsible for keeping him together, and when I failed, he made sure I knew it. For 2 years, I stayed. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I could fix him. Maybe I thought he would change. But one day, out of nowhere, he blocked me. Just like that, it was over. I didn't cry. I just sat there, staring at my phone, feeling like my life had suddenly become so quiet. Then, 2 months ago, he came back. I came home from school and saw an envelope in the mailbox. We never got letters unless it was a bill, but this wasn't a bill. It was addressed to me. I took it inside, opened it, and froze when I saw his name at the bottom. The handwriting was messy, almost frantic. He wrote about how much he regretted leaving, how he had changed, how he wanted another chance. I thought it was a joke at first, maybe one of my friends playing a stupid prank. I shoved the letter in my drawer and laughed about it. But later that night, my phone rang, an unknown number. I hesitated before picking up. Hello? Silence, just breathing, heavy, slow breathing. Beatrice? Are you trying to mess with me? More breathing, then a voice. Who's Beatrice? I hung up so fast my hands shook. I turned off my phone and tried to convince myself that it was just a coincidence. It wasn't. The next morning, I woke up to more missed calls, more messages, all from the same number. At school, I was outside with my friend, smoking a cigarette near the gate when my phone rang again. I answered, ready to snap. Dude, who the hell are you? Why do you keep calling me? Silence. Then he spoke. You're with Emma, aren't you? My blood ran cold. I turned, scanning the people around us. There were only a few students nearby, talking amongst themselves, none of them on a phone. I can see you. I hung up. My hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped my cigarette. I told Emma everything, but she just shrugged. Ignore it, she said. He'll get bored. He didn't. The letters kept coming. Sometimes I'd find a single rose left on my desk at school before class started. My classmates never saw who put them there. I started receiving pictures of myself, standing outside school, walking home, sitting alone in the library. Every time I saw an unknown number pop up on my screen, I felt sick. I tried to scare him off. I texted him on an old app where I wasn't blocked, telling him I'd report him to his workplace, lie to get him fired if I had to. He stopped. For a week. Then I started seeing him, on the street, in the bus, standing outside my school. I hadn't told him where I lived. I hadn't told him what class I was in. But somehow, he knew everything. One day, my usual ride to school wasn't available, so I had to take the bus. When I got on, I saw him sitting near the back. His wavy blonde hair, his sharp, hollow eyes. I wanted to cry. I had no idea how to get off without him following me. I broke the rules. I walked straight to the driver and told him not to open the doors for Alex at my stop. I told him everything in a whisper, panic making my words come out too fast. The driver nodded. When we reached my stop, the doors opened for everyone except him. He banged on the glass, both screaming, but the driver just drove away. I stepped onto the pavement, shaking, watching as the bus disappeared down the road. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. 2 weeks ago, I started getting new letters, but these weren't love letters anymore. They were threats. I changed my number. I carried a pocket knife with me everywhere, but it didn't stop. And then I had a realization that made everything so much worse. He had a twin brother. I had always known, but I never thought about it much. Now I started to wonder, was it really Alex I kept seeing? Or was his brother helping him? Were they both watching me? Was that why he always seemed to be everywhere at once? Then, the worst encounter yet happened. I was on my way to the airport, leaving the country for a short trip when I saw him again, sitting on the bus, watching me. He didn't even try to hide it. I snapped. Fear and rage tangled together in my chest until I couldn't hold it in anymore. I marched up to him and hit him. Hard. I barely remember what happened after that. Just my own yelling, my fists slamming against him as he barely reacted. I ran until I found a taxi, jumped in, and didn't look back. When I got to the airport, my phone buzzed. A new message, a picture of me, standing in the terminal. I blocked the number. I didn't care about evidence anymore. I didn't care about playing it smart. I just wanted it to stop. Now I'm in another country, safe for the moment, but I have to go back in 2 weeks. And if he shows up again, if I get one more letter, one more call, one more picture, I don't know what I'll do. I just know I'm tired. I just know I want my life back. And if he won't leave me alone, then maybe it's time I stop running. I was 20 when it happened. I don't think I'll ever forget that night. It still plays in my head sometimes like a movie I can't turn off. The fear, the confusion, the feeling that I was going to die. It's all still there. Back then, I was living with my boyfriend, Nate. He was older than me, almost 30, and we had been together for a couple of years. We had a small house on the outskirts of a quiet town, just the two of us and our pets, his big German shepherd, Duke, and my cat, Willow. The house was cozy, nothing fancy, but it was home. At least I thought it was. Nate had just returned from a month-long work trip. When he came back, something was different. He was distant, lost in his own world, barely aware of anything around him. I would talk to him and he wouldn't respond. He forgot things I had just told him, wandered around the house mumbling under his breath. It was like he wasn't really there. One evening, we had picked up takeout and were sitting in the living room. I was painting my nails and he was playing a video game. Then, out of nowhere, he muttered something under his breath. At first, I didn't catch it, but when I looked over, I saw his hands gripping the controller too tightly, his knuckles white. He turned to me, eyes wide, pupils blown out. Emma put a curse on me. Emma was an old friend of ours. We had let her crash at our place for a while, but things had ended badly. She used us, took advantage of our kindness, and then left. I hadn't thought about her in months, but Nate was convinced she had done something to him. Something in my gut twisted. The way he said it, the way he looked at me, it made my skin crawl. I suggested he take a cold shower, hoping it would snap him out of whatever was happening. He nodded, got up, and walked into the bathroom. I heard him muttering again, his voice low and frantic. Then I heard something else, a sharp noise like something hitting the wall. I stood up, my heart racing. I didn't feel safe. I walked over to the bathroom door and hesitated. Nate? The door swung open violently and he stood there, naked, shaking, eyes wild. You don't believe me, he hissed. You're with her. You're part of it. I backed away, panic setting in. He turned to Duke, pointed at me, and screamed, "Get her!" Duke was trained to protect, but he didn't move. He just stood there, ears back, tail low. He knew something was wrong too. Nate's face twisted with rage. He lunged at me. I turned and ran, my phone in my hand, already dialing his mother. I made it to the bedroom and tried to slam the door, but he kicked it open, sending me crashing into the closet mirror. Glass shattered around me, pain blooming in my arm where a shard had cut me. He grabbed me, his hands wrapping around my throat, squeezing. I couldn't breathe. I clawed at his arms, but he was too strong. Black spots swam in my vision. My ears rang. Then he whispered something that sent ice through my veins. You know what it's like to be raped, don't you? I don't know how I did it, but I managed to break free. I ran, tripping over my own feet, my body screaming in pain. I reached the front door and yanked it open, but the screen door was locked. My fingers fumbled with it, shaking too hard to work the latch. Then I heard it. Duke's scream. I froze, my body locking up. The sound was unnatural, a noise I had never heard before and never want to hear again. I turned back, tears streaming down my face. Nate, stop. The neighbors must have heard the commotion because I saw lights flick on in the houses around us. Someone shouted. A door opened. An older couple rushed towards me, pulling me inside before I could react. They called the police while I sat there, numb, shaking, barely able to comprehend what had just happened. The police arrived fast, sirens blaring, lights flashing. Officers surrounded the house, guns drawn. Through the window I saw Nate step outside, still naked, covered in blood. I knew, even before they told me, that Duke was dead. When they let me back inside to get my things, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Coppery, metallic, mixed with something worse. I couldn't bring myself to look at the bathroom, but I knew what was in there. The officers had blocked off most of the worst parts, but I still saw the blood. It was everywhere. Willow was hiding, too scared to come out. When I finally found her, she clung to me, trembling. That night, I went to stay with my aunt. 2 weeks later, I was on a plane to my mom's, trying to put as much distance between myself and that nightmare as possible. The trial took 2 years. Nate only got 10 months of house arrest. It made me sick. Sometimes I still see his face. In my dreams, in the shadows when I turn out the lights. And the worst part? He still tries to contact me, blaming me, saying it was my fault for not helping him. Maybe a small part of me wonders if I should have done more. If I should have seen it coming. If I should have left the door open for Duke. But then I remember the look in his eyes, and I know the truth. He was going to kill me. And I was never supposed to make it out of that house alive. Three years ago, I was in a long-distance relationship with a guy named Daniel. I was 19, and he was 17 when we got together. At first, everything seemed normal. He was charming in public, polite to strangers, always knowing exactly what to say to leave a good first impression. But behind closed doors, he was different. He had a temper, an entitled way of speaking, and an unsettling lack of empathy. If someone wasn't useful to him, he treated them like they didn't exist. I saw this firsthand when he was rude to my friends, my family, even to waiters at restaurants. I should have left sooner, but I thought he would change. I thought I could change him. Eventually, I had enough. I broke up with him, though not without resistance on his part. He refused to be the one to say the words. He wanted me to break it off so that he could play the victim. Even when I made it clear that I was done, he dragged things out, alternating between manipulation and outright cruelty. But in the end, it was over. I moved on quickly and found happiness with my current boyfriend, Lucas. It should have ended there. But Daniel wasn't the type to let things go. A few weeks after the breakup, he asked for his belongings back. I texted him a list of what he had left at my apartment, and he confirmed it was everything. We set a date and time for him to pick it up, a Thursday at 3 p.m. I had no intention of letting him inside my apartment or even seeing him alone. Something about his sudden mood swings unsettled me. The fact that he somehow knew I was in a new relationship despite being blocked on all my social media was a major red flag. That Thursday, Lucas and I were walking home from class when my phone rang. It was Daniel. He was furious, yelling that he had been waiting at the train station for over an hour. I told him we could meet him there with his things since he needed to catch a train anyway. When we arrived, the train station was empty. The town we lived in was small, and the station was mostly used during morning and evening rush hours. It was also surrounded by narrow alleyways that branched off into different parts of town. Then I received a text from Daniel. "I can see you, but I'm not coming out if Lucas is there." A chill ran down my spine. He was hiding somewhere, watching us. My hands shook as I texted back, telling him we were leaving his things on a bench. I didn't want to play whatever game he was trying to start. As we turned to go, I felt an unease creeping up my spine, as though eyes were still on us, lurking in the shadows. On the way home, another text came in. "I left something for you in your mailbox. A gift." Lucas and I exchanged uneasy glances. This meant he had been at my apartment. Had he been waiting for us there? Running from the train station to my place in such a short time would have been difficult, but not impossible. My stomach twisted as we approached the building. The mailbox contained nothing but a bill. But that didn't ease my nerves. The idea that he had been near my home unsettled me more than anything. We ignored the flood of texts and calls that followed. Hours passed, and eventually life seemed to return to normal. That was until I got a call from Daniel's older brother. He sounded concerned. Daniel had disappeared, taking a gas pistol from his brother's room. My stomach dropped. The conversation played on a loop in my head, but I couldn't wrap my mind around it. It felt too surreal, too dramatic, too absurd. Later that evening, Lucas noticed something strange. While passing by the basement staircase outside our apartment building, he saw two police officers examining the area. The next morning, his mother called with alarming news. An article in the local newspaper reported that a young man had been arrested for attempting to rob the pizza place directly below our apartment. He was armed with a knife, a gas pistol, and a bottle of lighter fluid. He claimed he wasn't there to rob the place. He was looking for his ex. When I contacted the police, I learned more. Daniel had also carried a mask, a wig, and fake documents in his duffel bag. He had jumped the fence near my building around 4 p.m., the exact time Lucas had left for groceries. That meant Lucas had walked out the front door while Daniel was hiding just a few feet away, armed and waiting. The horror of that realization made my skin crawl. Daniel had been that close. He could have been watching us the entire time, waiting for an opportunity. And if things had played out differently, if I had been home alone when he arrived, what would have happened? Despite everything, Daniel wasn't charged. He was a minor from a well-off family with military ties. He walked away without consequences. I tried to put it behind me. I wanted to believe that it was finally over. For 3 years it was. Then, 2 weeks ago, I received an email from an unknown sender. The message was short, written in a way that sent chills through my bones. I never stopped thinking about you. I still love you. Please answer me. It was signed with one name, Daniel. I deleted it, marked it as spam, but that familiar unease returned. I found myself checking over my shoulder more often, double-checking that my doors were locked. The past was supposed to stay buried, but now I wasn't so sure it ever would. I told myself that was the last I'd hear from him, but a part of me wasn't sure I believed it.